Facebook has paid to have articles written about TikTok and get them submitted to local media. Facebook has paid to have letters to the editor in newspapers that looked like they were written by just regular people. The articles and fake letters to the editor were spreading the message that TikTok was a danger to our children and to national security. The paid by Facebook articles and fake letters to the editors were pushing the same rumors that we just heard repeated by members of Congress. And too many times, as you heard, challenges to beliefs were dismissed immediately as lies. And so I'm concerned that our Congress not only doesn't have accurate information, but doesn't want it, and is hell-bent on writing laws based on beliefs instead of facts.
I am so damn tired of being lied to. I don't think I can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies, but I'm not gonna buy it anymore.
Hello, friend, and thank you for listening to the 271st episode of Congressional Dish. I'm your host, Jennifer Briney. If this is your first time listening to Congressional Dish, this is a show about government, not politics. I pay attention to what the people we elect do after we elect them, and I leave the coverage of the horse race, of the money race, of who are we going to elect to literally everyone else. But I want to know what Congress is doing with our money and with our names and with our Congress's investigative powers, which is what we are looking at today, because today's episode, we are going to look at the hearing that took place about TikTok. And we're going to look at a new bill that people are concerned about and then tie this together with the big picture. But really, this episode I decided to do because while I was producing the last episode about the Twitter files, I got so many messages from people that were seeing little bits and pieces of the TikTok hearing and didn't know what to believe. Now, before we get into any of the TikTok stuff, I kind of want to let you know what my bias is when it comes to TikTok. And my bias is I don't give a shit about TikTok. I don't use TikTok. I've never had it on my phone. I've never made a TikTok video. And while it is true that Congressional Dish, the podcast, now has a TikTok account, I am not the person who's running it, which is why you should follow it if following is a thing on TikTok, because Claire is running that TikTok account and she's putting really good clips from our shows onto those accounts. And that's why it's worth your time, because I am not the one in charge of it. I am notoriously bad at giving a damn about social media. You know, I do have social media. I'm addicted to Twitter. I use Instagram mainly for fun, but I haven't downloaded TikTok in particular for two reasons. One is that I just don't need another screen addiction. But the other reason is that I have heard forever that TikTok is Chinese spyware. And I was just like, I already have American spyware on my phone. I don't need Chinese spyware on my phone. So I just haven't downloaded TikTok. But that was a reason. That idea that TikTok is Chinese spyware is so prevalent in our society that I was making decisions based on that assumption. The thing is, though, about TikTok, a lot of people love it. A lot of Americans love it. 150 million Americans have TikTok accounts, which is damn near half of us. And so I know that you might love TikTok, and there's no shame in that game. The videos from TikTok, I see them all the time, and they make me giggle. So I understand the love. But you also might be afraid of TikTok, and that's fair too, because there's a lot of scary things being said about it by a lot of people. And I'm going to tell you right now at the beginning of this episode that I don't know who to believe. This is not a belief type thing. I'm trying to get facts. And so I'm not going to tell you who to believe. Your beliefs are your business. But what I will do is share with you what has been said, what has been documented, and then you can make the decision about what to do with TikTok in your personal life and in your kids' life on your own, because it's really tough to tell fact from fiction here. And when it comes to the TikTok hearing, like, have you heard more than 30 seconds of what the TikTok CEO actually said in that hearing? I didn't think so. And so today I'm going to play you clips from that hearing so that you can hear what the CEO said about TikTok. And like I said, judge it for yourself. Do you want that app on your phone or your kid's phone or in the country? Because that is an active conversation that is happening in Congress. And if you have feelings about that after getting the facts, you can share that with Congress and actually make a difference here because they haven't made up their minds, or at least some of them haven't made up their minds. And speaking of kicking TikTok out of the country, I also got so many messages in the last few weeks from people telling me about the Restrict Act, which is being inaccurately nicknamed the TikTok ban bill, but that's inaccurate because it would do way more than that. If this were to become law, it would be a disturbing expansion of government power. And because so many people hit me up about the Restrict Act, I read it for you, even though it hasn't moved at all. This is important. I don't want us freaking out about the Restrict Act too much right now because it hasn't passed a committee. It hasn't passed the Senate, definitely hasn't passed the House. Right now, the Restrict Act is just one of thousands of bills that is sitting in the corner of Congress, and it's going nowhere, at least as of right now. But what is eyebrow raising about this particular bill is that there are a few dozen senators who have put their names on it, and that group is as bipartisan as it gets. And so what I'm thinking is that this is exactly the type of bill that gets dingleberried into must-sign laws that are created to get us out of manufactured crises, like the upcoming debt ceiling and government crises that we can expect before the end of 2023. So there's opportunities for dingleberries on the horizon. This is a bill that is primed for dingleberrying, which we are now going to make into a word. And so I decided to read it. Lots of you wanted to know about it. I read it. And I do think it's important to know about the details because even if this exact bill doesn't become law, it's instructive to know what internet governance rules a large bipartisan group of senators are thinking would be a good idea. But the truth, the big picture truth here is that TikTok and the Restrict Act are sideshows because this is all about an economic war that the Trump and now Biden administrations appear to be openly waging against China. And it seems to be with the support of most of this Congress. And there have been some developments in that big picture that I think will help you understand why the China paranoia is increasing in this Congress. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. If you support the mission of this podcast, and if you think you're going to enjoy the fact that this is going to be presented to you with no breaks for advertisers, which not only keeps you from having to listen to even more advertising in your life, but also keeps this show free from corporate influence. This is a listener-supported podcast. The way this works is if you get value from the information, if you get value from the research, if you get value from hearing things for yourself, this is a podcast that is funded by you. So please contribute whatever you think is fair. Value for value means I provide value and you return it in a financial form in whatever amount feels fair to you. And all of the options are listed on the support page on congressionaldish.com. But just real quick, we do have a Patreon if you want to pay per episode. We have PayPal if you want to pay, one time or in monthly increments. We accept paper checks. We do have a PO box that goes to my accountant who is also my sister. So it all stays in the family. We take Zells, we take Venmos, we take Cash App payments, we take Chipotle gift cards. I absolutely love those. But yeah, whatever way works best for you is the way that works best for me. The only number I consider unfair is 0. So please remember to support the show. And thank you very much to all of the producers who do. This episode would not exist without you. And one more bit of housekeeping before I get into the actual episode. I do have to correct a mistake from the last episode that I actually made over and over again. In the last episode, I had quite a few sound clips from a representative named Stacey Plaskett. And I kept saying that it's Stacey Plaskett of Florida. She does not represent Florida. She represents the Virgin Islands. She is a delegate. So actually, she's not even really a representative. She is the delegate from the Virgin Islands. And what's crazy about this is I went back and checked my notes. And in my notes next to her name, every time, there it was, VI, Virgin Islands. Why did I say Florida? I have no idea. I just had Florida in my head, and I made that mistake over and over and over again. But this is why I love this community. You guys were very nice in letting me know about that mistake. And so I apologize to anyone who gave a damn about me miscrediting the state of Stacey Plaskett. So luckily, that was the worst mistake that I seem to have made in that episode. But yes, thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate my fact checkers. Okie dokie. Let's get into the whole TikTok thing. So first, what is TikTok? Because not everybody knows. Well, TikTok is the most popular time suck in the United States. Basically, it's a phone app that makes it easy to make quick, clever videos, and you can respond to other videos, and funny stuff can go viral very easily, as can educational things, like any videos that people like and spend time watching. The algorithm, which is the magic of TikTok, apparently, this algorithm is brilliant, apparently, at figuring out what you want and what you like and what you spend time watching and giving you more of that content. And because of this, because people are spending so much time on TikTok, people have also developed businesses and make good money making videos that go viral on that platform. And TikTok, like so many things in this weird economy of ours, is owned by a bigger company. And the company that owns TikTok is called ByteDance, and it is a multinational company that is based in China. And that is the heart of the whole problem here. The fact that the parent company is based in China. And so this all really started, the idea that TikTok is a problem, in the summer of 2020, when the Trump administration issued an executive order to ban TikTok from the United States, calling the app a national security concern because, like I said, the parent company is based in China. Now, like many of Trump's executive orders, that one was illegal and the court struck it down. But now the Biden administration, this time with partners in Congress in both parties, is considering banning TikTok the legal way, like with a bill that becomes a law. And all of this is happening over concerns that ByteDance, and therefore its subsidiary TikTok, is being somehow controlled by the Chinese government. And so the question really is that happening? Is TikTok connected in a way to the Chinese government that can give it control over the algorithm and therefore our data? And so first, I wanted to know, what is the ownership structure of ByteDance and TikTok? And that was something that the CEO of TikTok, who testified to Congress on March 23rd, he testified to the House Committee on Energy and Commerce. He gave an answer about the ownership structure of those two companies. Now, you're going to hear from him a lot today. Most of the testimony is going to be from Shu Chu, who is the millennial CEO of TikTok. He's quite young. He's about my age. Just a few things that I think are worth knowing about his background, because he's not, some member of the Chinese Communist Party. He's not Chinese. He's not American. He's actually from Singapore, where he still lives and where he flew to give this testimony to Congress. But Shu Chu, he was educated here in the United States, and he started his career as an intern at a little tiny startup called Facebook, while he was getting his master's in business administration from Harvard. And as many people know, Harvard is where Mark Zuckerberg, who is the guy who started Facebook, that's where he went to school and started Facebook. And so after working for Facebook, Shu Chu then went to work for Goldman Sachs for a while. And then he worked for investment firm DST, where 10 years ago, he led a team that invested early in ByteDance. Now, his own career went big time as chief financial officer of the Chinese version of Apple, which is a software corporation that went all stock market in 2018. And that IPO, I assume, is what made him filthy rich. The rumor has it that he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but no one really knows. And then 2 years ago, in March of 2021, he became the chief financial officer of ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok. And a few months later, after the United States began taking steps to ban TikTok, he became the CEO of TikTok as well, working at the executive level for both ByteDance and TikTok, overlapping for 6 months. But since November 2021, he has only been working at TikTok. He left his position at the parent company, ByteDance. One of the reasons that I feel like I need to go into that much detail is to let you know that he was one of the first investors in ByteDance. He was the CEO of ByteDance, and he's the CEO of TikTok. I think with that pedigree, we can assume that he knows some things about the company. And so with that in mind, here is his testimony about the ownership structure of these two companies.
Let me start by addressing a few misconceptions about ByteDance, of which we are a subsidiary. ByteDance is not owned or controlled by the Chinese government. It's a private company. 60% of the company is owned by global institutional investors. 20% is owned by the founder, and 20% owned by employees around the world. ByteDance has 5 board members. 3 of them are American. Now, TikTok itself is not available in mainland China. We're headquartered in Los Angeles and in Singapore, and we have 7,000 employees in the US today.
And in regards to his personal relationship as CEO of TikTok with the Chinese government,
Congressman, since I've been CEO of this company, I've not had any discussions with Chinese government officials.
but because ByteDance is based in China, and China has laws that, here's the thing, I don't know about the Chinese laws, but the fear is that China has laws that require every private company that does business in China to turn over data to its national security officials upon request. Now, how is that law structure? I have absolutely no idea. But what is being told to the American people by their leaders is this. So here is Senator Marco Rubio from the Senate floor. And by the way, I found this on Twitter, and he's the one that put his speech to dramatic music. I did not do this. So, but ignore the music and listen to what the man said.
Under Chinese law, their national security law, their national intelligence law, every company in China has to do whatever the Communist Party tells them. So if the Communist Party goes to ByteDance and says, we want you to use that algorithm to push these videos on Americans to convince them of whatever, they have to do it. They don't have an option.
So that's the fear. Now, what level is that fear warranted? I have no way to analyze that with the information I currently have. And I don't know who can be trusted when it comes to information about what China's laws actually say. I can tell you, though, that I don't trust the word of Senator Marco Rubio for what it's worth, because there have been way too many times in the 10 years I've been doing this podcast that he has been the person spreading bullshit. But he's a very good barometer for, what is the fear. So, but let's pretend for a moment that what he said is true. Why would it matter if that were true? Well, here's Sam Sachs. She is a think tank fellow who speaks Mandarin Chinese, has lived in China, has worked for the Council on Foreign Relations, has worked for multinational corporations, including Booz Allen Hamilton and Siemens, advising them on how to make money using her knowledge about China. And she is now working at think tank New America and for Yale Law School, writing and teaching about China. And she was invited to share her expertise with the House Committee on Energy and Commerce on February 1st. And here's what she said during the TikTok discussion.
I mean, to be honest, I think that the creating profiles based on aggregate data is primarily a counterintelligence concern for individuals with national security clearances in the military or access to sensitive information. For your average American, what the impact would probably be more in terms of would that population or individual preference information, could that be used to push information that would make, say, a spear phishing attack more appealing? It might be more likely that someone would click on a link because it appealed to them based on information that was collected. And so I would say I would look at it from that angle. But why I highlighted in my testimony a more sort of far-reaching impact is on economic competitiveness, which is a distinct issue, right? It's on Chinese firms who are able to access diverse international data sets beyond China. What that allows them to do is train AI models that could be more competitive in markets outside of China, where they're competing head-to-head with U.S. firms. So I would bucket the risk. You have national security issues. You also have targeted misinformation that could be used from that, as well as economic competitiveness between U.S. and Chinese firms. And it's important to sort of be clear about those distinct buckets of risk.
So, to summarize, there are 2 buckets of risk: national security and economic competition. And so let's look at the national security bucket first. Here's Sam Sachs again from her February 1st testimony. And in this clip, she's going to mention CFIUS, which is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. Now, CFIUS is a U.S. government agency which reviews and monitors foreign investments in the United States. When CFIUS says that a business may pose a risk to national security, it's allowed to enter into mitigation agreements with that business to see if there is a legal arrangement that can be worked out with the business that will calm the government's fears. After an agreement is made, CFIUS then monitors the business to ensure that it follows the rules of the agreement that allow it to stay in the country. And CFIUS has been creating an agreement with TikTok for years, and TikTok is in the process of implementing it. In fact, they seem to be pretty close to completion. And so, again, here's Sam Sachs testifying to Congress on February 1st.
I guess I'll start with the TikTok issue. I think that there are two important issues on the table. One is data security, who has access to what, and the other is the potential to push misinformation online, the recommendation algorithm. My understanding is that there is a national security agreement on the table. From a data security standpoint, if Oracle has the data in the cloud, there are multiple third-party auditors and an oversight board that reports to CFIUS, I think that would be pretty much locked down. The question around what kind of information the recommendation system pushes forward is an important one, and that also under this agreement would potentially, and it's called Project Texas, and I've published about it just a week or so ago, would be, again, subject to verification, source code reviewed, essentially vetted by CFIUS. I think it's important that the public understand what that national security agreement would look like and then have a debate. Is this enough to address those concerns? And to what extent would other social media companies also need to meet those?
And so going back to the TikTok hearing, here's TikTok's CEO talking more about Project Texas.
The bottom line is this. American data stored on American soil by an American company, overseen by American personnel. We call this initiative Project Texas. That's where Oracle is headquartered. Today, U.S. TikTok data is stored by default in Oracle servers. Only vetted personnel operating in a new company called TikTok U.S. Data Security can control access to this data. Now, additionally, we have plans for this company to report to an independent American board with strong security credentials. Now, there's still some work to do. We have legacy US data sitting in our servers in Virginia and in Singapore. We're deleting those, and we expect that to be complete this year. When that is done, all protected US data will be under the protection of US law and under the control of the US-led security team. This eliminates the concern that some of you have shared with me that TikTok user data can be subject to Chinese law.
And I wanted more details about that. And so I read the technical breakdown of the agreement that was written by Sam Sachs for more details about Project Texas. And I actually found her information really helpful. And here's some details that I think the CEO of TikTok would have loved to have shared with the committee if he was given the chance. And you'll see why I say that pretty soon. But the details of Project Texas, I think, will help you make your decision about whether or not this agreement is good enough. And so in July of 2022, like the CEO said, TikTok established a new subsidiary, the U.S. Data Security Incorporated. This new wing of TikTok now houses all of the parts of TikTok's business that have been concerning our government for national security reasons, the concerns over data privacy and China poisoning our minds with misinformation. In accordance with the deal worked out with our government, TikTok's U.S. Data Security Inc. will be governed by an independent board of directors, which TikTok will nominate, and CFIUS, also known as our government, will review. This board will report to CFIUS, this board will report to our government, and not to ByteDance, the parent company that's connected to China. And anyone working for this new branch of TikTok that controls all the data security must either be a U.S. citizen or hold a U.S. green card. And the U.S. multinational corporation Oracle is going to be the company that stores all of the U.S. data and will govern how it enters and exits our country and who has access to it. Here's the TikTok CEO in Congress.
We will also provide unprecedented transparency and security for the source code for the TikTok app and recommendation engine. Third-party validators like Oracle and others will review and validate our source code and algorithms. This will help ensure the integrity of the code that powers what Americans see on our app. We will further provide access to researchers, which helps them study and monitor our content ecosystem. Now, we believe we are the only company that offers this level of transparency.
I know that Twitter and Facebook and Google, they don't let us see their algorithms. And so, yeah, I believe they are the only company that is offering this as well. Now, the U.S. government itself is going to have access to and can conduct its own reviews of TikTok's code. And Oracle is going to be the company that will host and conduct oversight over TikTok's algorithm and the censorship functions. Now, if Oracle spots a risk, they will have the authority to report the risk to the government, which will be legally allowed to inspect the issue in detail. On top of that, there are legal teeth to this agreement. Because TikTok's privacy policy will be changed to limit data sharing between TikTok's U.S. Data Security Inc. and the Chinese parent company ByteDance, TikTok is going to be liable under Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act if it makes data transfers in violation of its policy. On top of that, the Stored Communications Act prohibits technology companies from giving information about accounts to foreign governments. If the Chinese government were to request data from TikTok, U.S. law would prohibit TikTok from providing that data. If they did it anyway, they would be subject to prosecution. Now, how sharp those legal teeth are for a corporation or its executives, I don't know. In general, I don't really see a lot of executives or corporations getting in trouble for anything. So, take that for what you will. But regardless of this agreement, which has been worked out in seemingly good faith between CFIUS and TikTok, the Biden administration and many members of Congress are flirting with the idea of forcing ByteDance to sell TikTok or have TikTok banned from the United States. And so when it comes to this sale, I do know that China, the government of China, has said that it's not going to allow a sale of TikTok because they don't want to be forced to sell the technology that powers the algorithm that makes TikTok special. And so Representative Darren Soto of Florida asked TikTok CEO about that refusal to sell.
So, Mr. Chu, would TikTok be prepared to divest from ByteDance and Chinese Communist Party ties if the Department of Treasury instructed you all to do so?
Congressman, I said in my opening statement, I think we need to address the problem of privacy. I agree with you. I don't think ownership is the issue here. With a lot of respect, American social companies don't have a good track record with data privacy and user security. I mean, look at Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, just one example. So I do think that, it is not about the ownership. It is a lot about making sure we have Project Texas, making sure that we're protecting and firewalling U.S. user data from unwanted foreign access, giving third parties to come in to have a look at this, and making sure that everybody is comfortable. We're giving transparency and third-party monitoring. And that's what we're doing for Project Texas.
And so the question for Americans seems to be whether or not we trust our own government, specifically CFIUS, to enact an agreement with TikTok that ensures that there are no data transfers to the Chinese government or Chinese government direction over the behavior of the algorithm. And so Congress had some specific questions about how our data is handled by TikTok. And you can decide if these answers work for you. So first up, here's Representative Jan Schakowsky of Illinois speaking to TikTok CEO.
Does TikTok share user information from companies, from parent companies, from affiliated or send user information overseas?
In the past, yes, for interoperability purposes. Now, after Project Texas, all protected U.S. data will be stored here with the access controlled by a special team of U.S. personnel.
This is Representative Deb Dingell of Michigan questioning the TikTok CEO.
Mr. Chu, have any prior versions of TikTok's app collected precise GPS information from U.S. users? Yes or no?
Yes, from back in 2020, about 3 years ago.
Are there currently TikTok users who still hold old versions of the app that collect precise GPS information from U.S. users? Yes or no?
There could be, but that's a small percentage.
Has TikTok at any time sold precise GPS information collected from U.S. users? Yes or no?
We do not sell data to data brokers, if that's the question.
And you've never done that?
I do not believe so.
Has TikTok at any time provided the Chinese government with either precise GSP information collected from U.S. users or inferences made from that data?
That I can give you a straight no.
Here's Representative August Pfluger of Texas speaking to the TikTok CEO.
Are keystroke patterns and rhythms part of TikTok gathering, the data that is gathered by TikTok?
If you're talking, Congressman, specifically about keystrokes, keystrokes, we do not engage in keystroke logging to monitor what the users say. is to identify bots.
Okay.
It's for security purposes, and this is a standard industry practice.
The other area of concern in the national security bucket, which Project Texas is designed to alleviate, is the concern that TikTok is going to rot our brains with bullshit spoon-fed to us by the Chinese devils. Well, here's TikTok's explanation of their content moderation, aka censorship policies. Here is the CEO of TikTok.
Congressman, we have only one process of removing content on our platform.
Okay.
And the process is done by our content moderation team, headquartered in Ireland and the US. And we will only remove content if it violates our guidelines. And that's something that we audit, or if there's a valid legal order.
And here are some questions posed by Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers of Washington. She is the chair of this committee.
Can you say with 100% certainty that ByteDance or the CCP cannot use your company or its divisions to heed content to promote pro-CCP messages for an act of aggression against Taiwan?
We do not promote or remove content at the request of the Chinese government.
The question
The
question is, are you 100% certain that they cannot use your company to promote such messages?
It is our commitment to this committee and all our users that we will keep this free from any manipulation by any government.
Which is a point that he stressed more than once.
TikTok will remain a place for free expression and will not be manipulated by any government.
Any government. And maybe that's the problem that some in Congress are really having with TikTok. Here's Representative Diana DeGette of Colorado going back and forth with the CEO of TikTok.
So I want to know from you, and I will give you time to answer this. You have current controls, but the current controls are not working to keep this information mainly from young people, but from Americans in general. What more is TikTok doing to try to strengthen its review to keep this information from coming across to people?
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. The dangerous misinformation that you mentioned is not allowed on our platform. It violates them.
I'm sorry to report it is on your platform, though.
Congresswoman, I don't think I can sit here and say that we are perfect in doing this. We do work very hard.
So how can you make yourself more perfect? I don't want you to say it's not there or you apologize. What can you do to limit it as much as possible, more than what you're doing now?
We invest a significant amount in our content moderation work. I shared that number in my written.
I know you're investing,
yes.
but what steps are you taking to improve the AI or whatever else you're doing to limit this content?
For example, if you search for certain search terms, we do direct you on TikTok to safety resources. That's one of the things we have done. We will continue to invest in this. I recognize and fully align with you that this is a problem that faces our industry, that we need to really invest and address. This, I'm very in alignment.
Limiting content was a theme in this hearing, and the reason was repeated over and over again. This is from about 3 minutes worth of questioning from Raul Ruiz of California, a Democrat.
Almost 30% of the videos that came up contained misinformation. A high level of misinformation, disinformation, misleading information, harmful misinformation. Why are these dangerous videos falling through the cracks of your company's efforts to enforce its own community guidelines and remove harmful misinformation?
To which the TikTok CEO responded,
yes, any dangerous misinformation we partner with third-party experts to be able to identify and help us with subject domain expertise. And with the expertise that we recognize, we rely on those to develop policies to recognize and remove content that could be.
Your efforts have failed, and they're dangerous.
Are you also thinking about the Twitter files right now? Are you also thinking about the formalized system of censorship that was formed after questions just like this that were posed to the CEOs of Facebook and Twitter and Google? My whole social media censorship episode was highlighting that testimony for you. Are you thinking about the formalized partnerships that formed after that testimony between the FBI and DHS and DOD and HHS and Treasury Department and CIA and State Department and state governments and members of Congress? The system of censorship in which government officials request censorship and are granted it millions and millions of times by the so-called American multinational tech companies? The system of censorship we would not know about if it weren't for a billionaire with enough cash to buy Twitter and expose what the previous owners did in partnership with the government. Could part of this TikTok ban effort be due to the elites knowing that they don't have the same censorship partnership program in effect with TikTok that they know, and we now know, exists with the American companies? Here's Representative Randy Weber, by the way, a Republican of Texas.
Should we plan to have a committee hearing every time, every day, every time there's something brought up so that we can limit the content on TikTok? Should Congress plan to do that, Mr. Hsu?
Now, I don't know if what I was witnessing in this hearing was pressure for a censorship partnership program with TikTok that mirrors the ones that have been formed with Meta and Google and Reddit and old Twitter and who even knows who else since the misinformation freakout began after Trump defied the elites and won the 2016 election instead of Hillary, which the Hillbots still blame to this day on information leaks instead of Hillary Clinton, and the party that decided to run an unfair primary to anoint her as the winner. But what I do know is that in this hearing where misinformation rotting our brains was such a concern, misinformation had appeared to have, ironically, rotted a lot of congressional brains. Because time and again, the members of Congress and the CEO of TikTok were not operating with the same set of facts. So, for example, here's Representative Paul Tonko of New York.
Will you continue to get information from these third parties on its users' health?
Get information. We do not get any user health information from third parties.
Here's the CEO of TikTok going back and forth with Representative Buddy Carter of Georgia.
We do not collect body, face, or voice data to identify our users. We do not. The only face data that you will get, that we collect, is when you use the filters to have, say, sunglasses on your face. We need to know where your eyes are. And
why do you need to know what the eyes are if you're not seeing if they're dilated?
And that data is stored on your local device and deleted after use if you use it for facial. Again, we do not collect body, face, or voice data to identify our users.
I find that hard to believe.
Here's Representative Debbie Lesko of Arizona speaking to the TikTok CEO.
A March 21st Forbes article revealed how troves of personal data of Indian citizens who once used TikTok remain widely accessible to employees at the company and its Beijing-based parent ByteDance. A current TikTok employee told Forbes that nearly anyone with basic access to company tools, including employees in China, can easily look up the closest contacts and other sensitive information about any user. This current TikTok employee also said, quote, if you want to start a movement, if you want to divide people, if you want to do any of the operation to influence the public on the app, you can just use that information to target those groups. Mr. Chu, why would a current TikTok employee say this if it wasn't true?
This is a recent article. I have asked my team to look into it. As far as I know, we have rigorous data access protocols. There's really no such thing where anybody can get access to tools.
All right.
So I disagree with a lot of the conclusions of that.
Madam.
Here's Representative Jan Schakowsky of Illinois speaking to the CEO of TikTok.
I do want to quote from employees that you had, and here's the quote. Everything is seen in China is really what they said. People who were in touch with the sensitive data were saying that. How do you respond to that?
I disagree with that statement.
Well, I know you disagree with that statement, but my point is, how does that happen that employees of the company are saying that, in fact, that's not true?
I don't know who this person is, so I cannot speak to what the person has or has not said. What I can say is, based on my position in this company and the responsibility that I have, that statement is just not true.
Oh, and you bet I have more. We're only about halfway through with this. So here's an exchange between Representative Tim Walberg of South Carolina and the CEO of TikTok.
The American data has always been stored in Virginia and Singapore in the past. And access of this is on an as-required basis by our engineers globally. By engineers for business purposes.
By engineers?
This is a private
ByteDance?
ByteDance.
The Communist Party?
No.
Why? How can you say that?
This is
if they have access.
Private business. This is a private business, and is like many other businesses, many other American companies, we rely on the global workforce.
So the global workforce that includes ByteDance, which is connected directly to the Chinese Communist Party,
that is a
access.
characterization that we disagree with. Now, in the future,
that's not what we can disagree with. That's a fact.
It's not, unfortunately.
With the CEO of ByteDance and your relationship to them.
Congressman, respectfully, in my opening statement, I said this is a private company. It's owned 60% by global investors. 3 out of the 5 board members on ByteDance are Americans. This is a private business.
And you report directly to ByteDance with the CEO who is a member of the Communist Party. Let me move on. I think we got the answer.
And by the way, if any of you guys are wondering, this is a bipartisan group of people I'm going back and forth with. Like, you've heard Democratic members of Congress and you have heard Republican members of Congress. That particular one was a Republican. Here's another Republican for you, Representative Kat Kamik of Florida.
Yes or no, ByteDance is required to have a member of the Chinese government on its board with veto power. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. ByteDance owns some Chinese businesses, and you're talking about this very special subsidiary that is for Chinese business licensing.
Mr. Show, I'm going to have to move on.
Here's Representative Gary Palmer of Alabama speaking to the CEO of TikTok.
Thank you. When the Chinese Communist government bought a share of ByteDance, it's been described as the Chinese Communist government's way of quieter form of control, and that companies have little choice in selling a stake to the government if they want to stay in business. And what I'd like to know is when the Chinese Communist government moved to buy shares of ByteDance, were you informed beforehand, yes or no?
No.
Okay.
Congressman ByteDance...
were you or anyone with TikTok asked for your opinion about the sale of shares of ByteDance to the Chinese Communist government? Yes or no?
It hasn't happened.
And here's Representative Anna Eshoo of California speaking to TikTok's CEO.
The Chinese government has that data. How can you promise that that will move into the United States of America and be protected here?
Congresswoman, I have seen no evidence that the Chinese government has access to that data. They have never asked us. We have not provided.
Well, you know what? I find that actually preposterous.
I have looked in. I have seen no evidence of this happening. And in order to assure everybody here and all our users, our commitment is to move the data into the United States to be stored on American soil by an American company, overseen by American personnel. So the risk will be similar to any government going to an American company asking for data.
And maybe that's why they don't trust it. But her accusing him of saying something that's preposterous, that was another theme in this hearing. The CEO of TikTok was repeatedly accused of just being a liar and even threatened with legal consequences. Here's Representative Bill Johnson of Ohio.
Do you realize that making false and misleading statements to Congress is a federal crime?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And here's the chair of the committee, Kathy McMorris Rogers of Washington.
I will remind you that making false or misleading statements to Congress is a federal crime.
And I think she was feisty because Chu's testimony directly contradicted much of the conclusions that she had drawn before the hearing even began. This is from her opening statement. This is one of the first things that was said in this hearing.
TikTok collects nearly every data point imaginable, from people's location to what they type and copy, who they talk to, biometric data, and more. Even if they've never been on TikTok, your trackers are embedded in sites across the web. TikTok surveils us all. And the Chinese Communist Party is able to use this as a tool to manipulate America as a whole. We do not trust TikTok will ever embrace American values, values for freedom, human rights, and innovation. TikTok has repeatedly chosen the path for more control, more surveillance, and more manipulation. Your platform should be banned.
Why make this guy fly all the way from Singapore and go through this if they weren't interested in having a real conversation with the man? There were so many questions that could have been asked about the details of Project Texas that would help us understand whether or not that agreement that was made with our government is enough, which is a serious conversation that should have been the goal. I had to go and find so many of the details of Project Texas myself and share them with you myself, since so much of the hearing was wasted on what appears to be bullshit accusations by either uninformed or misinformed members of Congress. It's either that or the CEO of TikTok lied so many times that he is going to go to prison for the rest of his life for perjury, because he was certainly reminded over and over again that that was possible. And so I'm very skeptical of our members of Congress. I don't know where they were getting their information from. But one thing that I do think is obvious is this. This was the CEO of TikTok.
The potential security, privacy, content manipulation concerns raised about TikTok are really not unique to us. The same issues apply to other companies. We believe what's needed are clear, transparent rules that apply broadly to all tech companies.
And producing this episode right after the Twitter Files episodes is really giving me quite a bit of whiplash, because so many things that members of Congress are saying that the Chinese might do using TikTok are things that we know that officials in our own government are doing right now. American social media platforms have a proven system of censorship established with like a dozen federal agencies, including the FBI and the CIA, along with state officials and members of Congress. Censorship at the request of our government officials is a systematic problem right now in the United States. And my own government that governs the country where I actually live is a far greater threat to me personally than the CCP, which is a political party in a country on the other side of the world. We also know that our War Department requested that their propaganda sites be not only allowed on the American social media networks, but whitelisted, as in exempt from censorship rules. We know that Twitter complied for at least a little while with that one, but we have no insight into how Facebook, Google, Reddit, or any other websites have chosen to handle those kinds of requests. And data security. Did you even know that Facebook had a data breach in 2021 that released the information of over 500 million people? I don't feel like this was really big news here in the United States, and perhaps that's because data breaches are so common in this country that I feel like most of us don't even care anymore. And so legislation is certainly needed, not just for TikTok, but for all the social media companies and our government. We need clear rules and punishments for breaking them. We need rules about algorithms. Now, I personally think that the factors that go into algorithms and how they affect post visibility should be public knowledge. Twitter used to be chronological, and I loved it that way. And so these algorithms are optional. And so if these companies want to screw with what we see, they're private companies. They can, but it shouldn't be a secret sauce. We should have the right to know the ingredients to decide for ourselves if we want to ingest what they're selling, and everyone should have access to the rules so that businesses can compete fairly in these digital marketplaces. We also need rules about what companies can do with our data. I personally think that no company should be allowed to sell the information that I have to give to them in order to secure my account or complete a transaction, because we know that selling our information is a big business. And if it weren't so profitable, they wouldn't be incentivized to store so much of our data. That's a business model that needs to be brought down. And we need rules prohibiting our own government officials from ordering or requesting censorship. Project Texas is at least attempting to put a wall around TikTok to keep political parties in China from using it for propaganda and censorship purposes. But where's the wall that's going to keep our government, that's going to keep the Republicans and Democrats from manipulating all social media? From manipulating, let's say, Facebook. And Facebook is an interesting one here, because I think they should be a bigger part of this story. Because about a year ago, the Washington Post confirmed that the Facebook people have been conducting a bullshit campaign about TikTok. Facebook has paid to have articles written about TikTok and get them submitted to local media. Facebook has paid to have letters to the editor in newspapers that looked like they were written by just regular people. Bored nerds like me just expressing organic concerns about TikTok infecting us all with brain worms. Now, obviously, I'm paraphrasing the situation. The articles and fake letters to the editor were spreading the message that TikTok was a danger to our children and to national security. The paid by Facebook articles and fake letters to the editors were pushing the same rumors that we just heard repeated by members of Congress. Think about all those times that you just heard when the members of Congress had their specific concerns responded to with flat denials by TikTok's CEO.
I disagree with that statement. So I disagree with a lot of the conclusions of that.
Madam.
No, that is not correct. No. We do not do that. That is a characterization that we disagree with. It's not, unfortunately. He's not. It hasn't happened. That statement is just not true.
You can't help but wonder, is it really possible that he lied that many times under penalty of perjury? Or is it possible that members of Congress are wildly misinformed? And if that's the case, where could they have gotten all their nonsense from? Could it be possible that the boomer Congress has some brainworms from Facebook's anti-TikTok bullshit campaign? Because the motive for Facebook to go all Regina George on TikTok seems obvious to me. But since proof is always good, an internal Facebook report that was leaked by a whistleblower showed that Facebook was worried that teens were spending 2 to 3 times as much time on TikTok than on Facebook and Instagram. Because, obviously, when was the last time that Facebook and Instagram had an original idea? Stories they ripped off of Snapchat, Reels they ripped off of TikTok. Facebook and Instagram are stale. The only reason most of us use them is because everyone else has a Facebook or Instagram account. Facebook was the first big social media platform, and our boomer relatives found Facebook and never left. It's the villages of the internet. And I log onto it once in a while to see how the boomies are doing, but would it affect my current day-to-day life if Facebook ceased to exist? Nope. But I would miss my TikToks on the toilet time. The competition from TikTok is real. And I know that's a weird thing to say considering I've never actually downloaded TikTok. The best part of my Instagram time is made up of the TikToks that people are posting. Facebook and Insta can't compete. And people are using other social media platforms, which means there's less data about us for Facebook and Instagram to collect and sell. Facebook got used to being the biggest. They got used to being the monopolist. They liked when we were essentially trapped with nowhere better to go. And so, if TikTok were to no longer exist, if it were to, say, be banned from the country, where could all the TikTok lovers go? Where could the influencer business go? Reels. The shitty version of TikTok that already exists on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook can't compete. And so their motto appears to be, if they can't beat them, kill them. And they can't beat them. Like I said, Facebook and Meta, they can't compete. And it's not just because of their stale products. It's because they lost our trust years ago. Back in 2012, 2013, when I started Congressional Dish, I knew people who built whole businesses on Facebook, playing by the rules that Facebook established, published, and promoted. And then bam, in like 2015, 2016-ish, pay to be seen happened. Facebook changed the rules over the course of a few months, changing the algorithm so that you had to boost your posts. Pay the digital landlord if you wanted more than a small percentage of the people who went out of their way to follow you to actually see the information you post. Now, I hadn't built a following yet, or since, and so I didn't lose much. But other people who were doing well using Facebook as their marketplace got destroyed by the paywall erected between them and their customers and audiences. Facebook changed the rules of the game mid-game, and there wasn't a damn thing we could do about it. They knew we had nowhere else to go. And the results have been obvious. Some people I know from back then aren't working in the online world anymore. It broke their businesses and they're done. Those people obviously don't trust Facebook. Then there's people like me that have pretty much just accepted that social media in its current form is a rigged game and haven't invested much time or money in it. I don't trust that the rules are fairly written or refereed, and so I don't play the game. And other people I know just accepted that the monopolists changed the rules mid-game and have paid up. And some of them are wildly successful. I am insanely proud of some of the people in this category. They made it work. But they remember what happened just as well as I do. They remember the burn. The trust is gone with them too. And watching Facebook's officials pinky promise in Congress that they would censor us, and then seeing them do it, and now knowing that they have a formalized system with weekly meetings and all of it proven in the Twitter files, that's also not helping to rebuild trust. And so since the trust is gone, Facebook, Meta, has spent money on an effort to at least destroy TikTok's reputation. That motive is crystal clear, and we have proof in writing. And we also know that Meta, which is Facebook's parent company, is buying brainworms to be fed in person to members of Congress, and OpenSecrets.org has the receipts. Because during the last Congress, Facebook spent almost $40 million on lobbying. Facebook spent almost $40 million paying people to tell members of Congress what Facebook wanted them to hear. And what do you think they wanted Congress to hear about TikTok? You know, when you hear things repeated enough, you believe them. And if you are in Congress and you hear things on the local news and you read things in the letter to the editor section of the local paper and you hear things in your meeting with private sector government affairs directors, lobbyists at work, and when you hear things at the dinner table with your old Facebook friend, you know, when you hear things from different places over and over, belief kicks in. And this Congress clearly believes. There were bipartisan beliefs about TikTok. And too many times, as you heard, challenges to beliefs were dismissed immediately as lies. And so I'm concerned that our Congress not only doesn't have accurate information, but doesn't want it, and is hell-bent on writing laws based on beliefs instead of facts. Because facts versus fiction on TikTok, they are tough, if not impossible, to clearly identify at this point in time. And this Congress does seem intent to legislate on this topic. And there is bipartisan rage being channeled into actual bills. Hence why I'm focusing on the censorship issue so much right now. Laws governing social media and the internet in general are possible, if not probable, in this basket case of a Congress. Which brings me to the Restrict Act. Now, I read this bill because a lot of people asked me to, but I want to be clear that what I'm about to tell you as of this recording is not law, and it is not close to becoming law, at least not on its own. This bill is in the introduced stage, which is the first stage. It's at the mom and dad meet at a bar stage. There has been no penetration. There is no consent to move forward. There have been no votes. This is as early in the process as it gets. And I generally don't read bills for the show that haven't moved at all because there are thousands of bills that get introduced in every Congress and never go anywhere. And some of those bills are absolutely batshit insane, but no one even notices them because they're in a giant pile. And so for some context on how big that pile of bills is, in the last Congress, there were over 15,000 bills introduced, which is the stage the Restrict Act is at. And at the end of the Congress, almost 14,000 of them hadn't moved. So 14 out of 15 bills in the Congress just sat there. And that's the pile that the Restrict Act is sitting in. But I have seen bills like this dingleberried into law on must-sign legislation so many times. It's a deliberate tactic. The upcoming debt ceiling and government funding crises are going to be all about creating a crisis situation so dire that President Biden will have to sign anything to prevent it. And this is a tried and true Republican Party strategy that worked in the Obama and Biden years quite a few times. But even if the Restrict Act doesn't become law via its own vehicles or via dingleberry, we need to know what our Congress is thinking because we have plenty of time to bully them into changing their weak campaign-focused minds. If we bother to try, which is way too big of an if. But anyway, the Restrict Act is instructive of what this Congress seems to be on a path towards. And the reason I say that is that 25 senators have put their name on it. That's how much they support this bill. And by the way, that's 4 more senators than the last time I checked. And first of all, we're talking senators here. Those are the adults in this Congress. And second, that group is as bipartisan as it gets. There were 13 Republican names on it, 11 Democrats, and 1 independent. And that independent is Angus King of Maine, not Bernie. And what they think is a good idea is to give the Secretary of Commerce and the President of the United States the power to ban companies from the United States. The companies that would be eligible for banning would be companies with direct or indirect connections to foreign countries that are on a bad guys list. Now, the way that these senators envision this working is that the Secretary of Commerce could declare that companies are in any way owned by someone from bad foreign countries that should be banned from the United States, and then the president would get the authority to do the actual banning of the company. Companies eligible for banning are pretty much any companies financially controlled in any way, again, directly or indirectly, by someone who is a citizen of a foreign country listed on a baddies list that's going to be crafted by the Secretary of Commerce. And there are some countries that are baddie enough that these senators think they weren't being listed by name in law. These countries include China, including Hong Kong, Russia, Iran, North Korea, Cuba, and Venezuela, but only the Nicolas Maduro version of the government. Now, if you recall, President Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela is the guy that we have been trying to regime change since 2017. We're trying to do things to get him kicked out of office, specifically the dumbest coup attempt of all time, where essentially the Trump administration said, Nicolas Maduro is not the president anymore. This other guy, Juan Guaido, is the president, and got some countries, not even close to the entire world, but other countries to be like, yeah, this other guy's the president now, except it didn't stick. And Nicolas Maduro is actually still the president of Venezuela. And what's crazy is that Nicolas Maduro is named in this bill, which I actually find disturbing because it indicates to the world that some countries are viewed as intrinsically bad. So not Venezuela. Our problem in this bill says that our problem is with the Maduro government, not the country itself. But Cuba, North Korea, Iran, Russia, and China, those countries are listed by name, not by administration or political party. And that looks like an enemies list to me. And in case we want more enemies, other countries are allowed to be added to the baddies list at the whim of the Commerce Secretary as well. Now, the reasons that the Commerce Secretary would be allowed to recommend a company be banned is if they say the company is a threat to national security, specifically a threat to critical infrastructure, communications networks, or if the company is, quote, interfering in, unquote, a federal election or trying to, quote, steer policy and regulatory decisions in favor of the strategic objectives of a foreign adversary, unquote, which is the part of the bill that makes it a direct threat to free speech. Because another term for trying to, quote, steer policy, unquote, is lobbying. It's petitioning your government. It's political speech, which is the most protected kind of speech by the First Amendment. And the Twitter files are showing us that much of what has been branded by the people within our government as being published by, quote, foreign adversaries, unquote, trying to, quote, steer policy, unquote, has been American people saying things in America. And so if this were to become law, multinational companies that don't play ball with the censorship-demanding officials from the U.S. government and companies that have any connection that can be found to citizens who were born in a country on an easily edited baddies list, those companies could be banned from the United States on the say-so of 2 people, one of whom is appointed by the other. As if there isn't pressure enough on a social media company when it's getting pressured to censor the internet or to make government or party-preferred messages go viral. As if there isn't pressure enough when the FBI, DHS, HHS, Treasury Department, DOD, State Department, CIA, the states, and members of Congress, and the president are asking for these things, while simultaneously threatening their legal immunity for what other people post. The Restrict Act would add to that a realistic threat that the company could be kicked out of the country entirely. And so the only logical action would be for those companies to take down even more of policy steering, aka political messages. And even if the Commerce Secretary's efforts don't succeed in a ban, the Commerce Secretary would get vast powers to badger. The Secretary of Commerce would be given the authority to demand any documents they want, hold hearings, question witnesses under oath, and issue subpoenas. And the information provided could be shared within the U.S. government and with other governments, as long as the Secretary of Commerce says it's necessary for national security purposes, which is a decision that would be, quote, unreviewable, unquote, in court. On top of that, there is secrecy built into this process, because a good chunk of this process would be exempt from the Freedom of Information Act and the Administrative Procedure Act. And the Administrative Procedure Act is the part of the law that ensures that the public has information about how and why decisions are made and ensures that documents about those decisions are available to the public. And one thing that I want to make crystal clear, since this is being branded as a TikTok ban bill, this goes way beyond TikTok. This allows the banning of all kinds of services that connect us to each other via the internet, including desktop apps, mobile apps, gaming apps, and payment processing apps, and entire online marketplaces. Companies can also be targeted for forced sales or bans if they provide software or hardware or any other important component of telecommunications services, including wireless networks, mobile networks, satellites, stuff like that, or if they provide data hosting, internet service, computing, or data storage services for more than 1 million people inside the United States. Companies can be banned if they make drones or driverless cars or products that help maintain those products. Companies can be banned if they make products and services using artificial intelligence, quantum computing, advanced robotics, biotechnology, so many more. Basically, this bill would open the door for the paranoia, racism, and sure, some legitimate concerns about companies in a globalized economy to be shut out of our country at the whims of 2 people, the president and a person the president appoints, in an essentially secret process with limited judicial review. And so when I look at this, what foreigner would want to invest in a company in the United States or partner with an American to do business in the United States, knowing that your home country being listed on a baddies list could be reason enough to have your company destroyed? This bill is a weapon of global economic war, but blowback is a real thing. This bill or others like it could easily have the effect of cutting Americans off from information being shared in other parts of the world and causing investment in the United States to be viewed as risky to citizens of the rest of the world, which could damage our economy in a major way. And before I wrap up this summary of the Restrict Act, I do want to touch on the penalties in this bill, because there's been much concern that has been expressed about the section that lists penalties for violating this law. Penalties which are steep. It includes civil penalties of $250,000 or twice the value of the transaction that was prohibited, whichever is more, and also includes criminal penalties of up to $1 million and 20 years in prison. Now, I think the intention is for those penalties to be applied to a company that doesn't respect the ban or that refuses to comply with terms agreed upon with the government if they are allowed to continue to do business here in the United States. So like if TikTok were to be allowed to stay in the United States because of Project Texas, but then sends our data to the Chinese government anyway, these punishments are meant for that situation. But the way this is written, the punishment for getting around bans applies to, quote, persons, unquote, and not entities, quote unquote. And so when people express concern that this could be used to, say, punish an individual for using a VPN to get access to TikTok, while I don't think that's the intention, I don't think that's impossible. You have to be very careful about how you word laws. Basically, this bill is sloppy. It grants vast powers to the Commerce Secretary and the President. And so accusations of this bill being way too broad and carelessly written are deemed fair by this armchair legislative analyst. I do not want this to become law. But big picture, this is all a sideshow, because here's what this is all really about. Here's Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. He's the Democratic senator who wrote the Restrict Act. Here he is on Fox News in an interview explaining why he wrote the Restrict Act.
One of the things I always make clear is my beef is with the Communist Party of China. My beef is with Xi Jinping, the Communist Party leader, who treats his own people awfully. What he does to the Uyghur people, what he does to the people of Hong Kong. And I think you do need to make that distinction. This is not about the Chinese diaspora, Chinese Americans, but to kind of deny the authoritarian regime and their record is not based on a factual analysis.
TikTok and the Restrict Act, these are just pieces of a much larger game. The big game is a battle for who's going to control the world. And in the battle for global control, China is clearly perceived in Congress as an existential threat to the dominance that the United States has had over the finances of the world since the end of World War II. Here is Representative Dan Crenshaw of Texas in the TikTok hearing.
The long-term goal of the Chinese Communist Party is the demise of the American power, and that starts with our youth. At any moment, they could demand that all of TikTok's data be used to design an AI algorithm with the sole purpose of promoting Chinese interests and destroying our society from within. You want to know why Democrats and Republicans have come together on this? That's why we are so concerned.
I have talked about this dynamic so many times before. But since the end of World War II, our country has been the only superpower on this earth. And a project that has been the obsession of the elites in this country since the end of that war has been to get the entire world to be a part of just one global economic system that we kind of control. Now, the three pillars of that system have been the World Trade Organization, which is headquartered in Switzerland, and the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, both of which are headquartered in Washington, D.C. And the reality of the situation is that the United States government elites have been the leaders of this global system. They have been in charge of the rules-based international order, as they like to call it. And an unfortunate reality is that in the 25 years or so since the World Trade Organization has officially existed, the United States government has been a piss-poor steward of that global economic system. So, for example, we know that backdoors for the U.S. government have been installed into American multinational corporations. The entire world knows that financial documents in multinational American banks were shared with the U.S. government. Because the Patriot Act created a system that facilitated the handover of supposed to be confidential financial documents of anyone who wasn't American in order to help hunt the terrorists. And any company that didn't do it was branded a terrorist sympathizer. And so the multinationals gave the U.S. government financial documents, with secret legal proceedings being created to rubber stamp the process. And that's in addition to our government literally tapping the international internet cables, collecting God only knows what. The entire world has known since 2013 that a global spying network was constructed by both Republican and Democratic Party-controlled administrations in a public-private partnership with so-called American multinational telecoms. And it was everyone's data that was being copied. This is a fact. In 2002, we know that AT&T, at the request of the Defense Department's National Security Agency, installed splitter cables on the actual wires that operate the entire internet. These were dummy devices. They couldn't separate data. Everything that went over the wires got copied and sent to the government. And they stored the data in a massive storage complex in Utah. And the only part of that which was treated as controversial here in the United States was the part where Americans' data was collected. The George W. Bush and Obama administrations were promising that they were only spying on the rest of the world. And after the rest of the world found out about that, leading to international outrage, the extent of which American corporate media largely shielded us from, Congress changed the law to give the multinationals legal immunity for all that spying. And then after that, the USA Freedom Act was enacted, which was a law that was branded as the one that fixes all the spying. Whoopsie daisy, don't worry about that anymore. Except all it did was shift the storage. Instead of the government storing our data, the private companies would do it and then hand the government the info they want upon request. So many requests in these public-private partnerships. And in that particular request system, secret courts were allowed. We have had formalized spying partnerships between government and American multinational corporations for a while, and the rest of the world knows it. And countries that don't trust us anymore have been incentivized to look to non-American banks and telecoms if they want to eliminate the U.S. spying threat. Then there was that whole 2008 kerfuffle. Remember that? When American multinational bankers broke all kinds of laws with systematic document forging operations and widespread gambling on scammy financial products, and they crashed the entire world's economy. That happened. And our system of justice, the system of justice that was trusted by the world to police the American multinational banks, made sure that exactly no one paid for that economic catastrophe caused by widespread corporate fraud. And so why would anyone trust the United States to police the global economy after that? No one has been held accountable. Why would we be trusted? Especially when we have recently shown that our word, even when sealed in treaties, means nothing. Because the Iran nuclear deal, whether you liked it or not, was a deal that was negotiated and signed by the most powerful countries on earth, and not just World Trade System countries. The Iran nuclear deal was signed by the United States, Iran, the UK, France, Germany, Russia, and China. The deal was basically that Iran would stop working on building nuclear weapons and let in inspectors to make sure they were compliant. And in return, the World Trade System would lift sanctions, which are weapons of economic war, that had been used against Iran for decades to stop Iran from making money from selling fossil fuels within the World Trade System. And the deal was working. The sanctions were removed, Iran was complying, and inspectors were certifying their compliance. But then we, as the stewards of the World Trade System, elected President Donald Trump, one of the most impulsive characters in all of world history, to be the most powerful person on Earth, to be the most powerful person in the World Trade System. And tough guy Donald Trump ripped up the deal in our names and abused his sanctioning power to put all of the sanctions back on Iran's fossil fuel sales, demanding that the deal be redone to Mr. Art of the Deal's liking. The other countries in the deal be damned. And Iran, despite that, continued complying with their end of the deal until Trump put even more sanctions on Iran in 2019. And that's when Iran said "F this" and started working on their nuclear weapons program again. And all that the other countries in the deal, the UK, France, Germany, Russia, and China, could do was just watch this all happen. President Trump put the sanctions back on, and there wasn't anything the other countries could do to check that power. 5 out of the 6 countries that made that deal with Iran wanted to keep it, and they were powerless to do so. Their participation in that treaty was essentially exposed to be worthless as the United States' trustworthiness in treaties. And that was a big wake-up call for other countries who witnessed how much unilateral control the United States has over the financial system and the lack of any real check on that power. And the United States' lawlessness in the World Trade System has only progressed from there. Like when the Trump administration tried to replace the president of Venezuela in history's dumbest coup attempt, the World Trade System banks, the multinationals that are labeled American, they essentially stole Venezuela's oil money that Venezuela was storing in those banks and said that only a government controlled by the guy we wanted, Juan Guaido, could have access to it. And then after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, that same play was used against Russia, only on a much more massive scale. An estimated $350 billion of Russia's cash that was stored in World Trade System banks was frozen after the invasion. And there is a plan that is openly discussed in public by World Trade System elites from the United States, Canada, Poland, Estonia, and others to steal that money and give it to Ukraine, in theory to pay to rebuild Ukrainian infrastructure, which would, of course, funnel those funds to the for-profit multinational corporations like Bechtel, Halliburton, to the stock market profiteers that are just waiting to rebuild that country. And no matter how you feel about the Russia-Ukraine war, those feelings are beside the point here. The point is that the entire world is seeing that the rules of the rules-based order are not applying to the United States. Because until the last few years, it was generally unthinkable that the assets of a government could be seized by other governments because of the trust placed on the rules agreed upon in the World Trade System. But those seizures are happening anyway. We created a rules-based economic order in which our country doesn't have to follow the rules and can make up new ones as we go. And even our allies don't trust us with that power anymore. And so what is happening now is that other countries are building an alternative multinational economic system, one that is increasingly being designed to exclude the United States, although it doesn't have to be that way. But what is happening is that China is the baddie because they are leading the construction of that alternative multinational economic system. China is the baddie because they are building a World Trade System competitor. And they are building it the same way the World Trade System was built, through trade agreements. Big ones. In November of 2020, 15 countries signed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, which is the largest trade agreement in history, economically connecting approximately 30% of the humans on Earth. It's a trade agreement that includes China alongside some of our most significant Pacific allies, including Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and South Korea. And the United States was going to be a member of RCEP, but President Trump pulled us out of the negotiations. And without the United States there to represent the World Trade System and the ideals of it, the largest trade agreement on Earth is one that eliminates taxes on products and profits that pass between those countries. But that agreement doesn't have any of the provisions at all governing labor, environment, or government-owned businesses. The largest trade agreement on Earth doesn't advance the privatization of everything that has been central to the rules of the global order that the United States has been pushing for since the end of World War II. It also doesn't contain the provisions that are supposed to protect workers and the environment, which is the good that we are always told that these trade agreements do. Put another way, RCEP is a major building block of a new economic order in which governments are allowed to play a larger role in business and in which workers and the environment will be protected at essentially China's standards. And I don't think many Americans envy Chinese slaves or Beijing air. In addition to trade agreements, China is also making currency agreements. So at the end of March, we're talking just like a week ago, China and Brazil, which is the largest economy in South America, reached a deal to trade in their own currencies instead of using the US dollar as an intermediary, which has been the standard in the world since the end of World War II. Here's Senator Marco Rubio of Florida freaking out about that on Fox News.
Brazil, in our hemisphere, largest country in the Western Hemisphere south of us, cut a trade deal with China. They're going to, from now on, do trade in their own currencies, get right around the dollar. They're creating a secondary economy in the world, totally independent of the United States. We won't have to talk about sanctions in 5 years because there'll be so many countries transacting in currencies other than the dollar that we won't have the ability to sanction them.
Yep, that's precisely why they're doing it. Much of the world has witnessed us abuse our sanctions power and is looking for an alternative to our system, which China is providing, including to Russia. China has made similar deals eliminating the necessity for US dollars with Russia since the Ukraine invasion and our imposition of the harshest sanctions of all time. Since the Ukraine invasion, to get around US sanctions, Russia has been using the Chinese currency to buy and sell products around the world, after using almost none of China's currency for anything before the Ukraine invasion. Because while we're told that the sanctions that we put on Russia are supported by the whole world, that's actually not true. Approximately 44 countries support the sanctions, cutting Russia off from the economic system that we designed to be global as a form of punishment. But there are over 190 countries in this world, and that means that most of them are not on board. And so Russia has not been crippled. The war continues, as does Russia's economy. It's a clear sign of our diminishing global power, and Team World Trade is pissed. Now, as far as the teams are concerned, I've struggled and still struggle to know what to call the two sides. I settled on World Trade System for our side because the World Trade Organization is where the most comprehensive set of rules of the rules-based order are written. But the other side, I've never had a nickname for it because saying, China, that's not enough. There are other countries involved in this. And so I think we're at the point that we can officially start calling the other side, the other economic system, BRICS, which stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. because these countries are partnering on trade and on currency exchanges. And that is clearly progressing. This alliance is expanding and becoming more and more formalized. And its expressed intent is to operate outside of and compete with the World Trade System. The BRICS countries are developing an international payment system to compete with the SWIFT payment system that World Trade System multinational banks use to transfer funds around the world. The BRICS countries have created a new development bank to compete with the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And more countries are interested in participating in their system, including Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Algeria, Argentina, Nigeria, and our next door neighbor, Mexico. This system's creation and expansion is the center of every China bad scandal. This is their actual sin. And today we've been focused on an economic and information battle in this global game of financial system monopoly. The business of TikTok and whether or not it should be banned for being partnered with a Chinese company, that's an economic battle. That's an information warfare battle. But the big game, if our world trade system monopoly continues to be challenged, the big game could easily break out into military battles as well, even full-blown war. And it's not hard to see how. The stage for a war with China is being set, and no one is even hiding it. And I know this needs its own episode. But real quick, we have military bases surrounding China. And we just signed a deal for access to 4 more military bases in the Philippines. We have the Pacific Deterrence Initiative, which has been passing out weapons to China's neighbors. And we are directly threatening China in regards to Taiwan, which many Americans don't seem to realize is not its own separate country. Taiwan is where the losers of the last big Chinese civil war have been hanging out, and the relationship of that island to China and who owns what, and that is a big old mess. And our country is inserting itself into that mess. And we are getting increasingly aggressive. And a few months ago, Congress enacted multiple dingleberry bills onto the NDAA, which is our defense authorization, the annual bill that says what we can and cannot do in war. And on that law, we increased our money and weapons and changed our policy in regards to Taiwan. And I will do an episode about that soon. I think we have to do an episode about that soon. But the big picture is that in all these different arenas, economic and military, I'm seeing an increasing trend. A trend away from China being treated as a competitor and more like an enemy. And I think we should take a beat as a country and think about if this is a road that's in our best interests. Our being us regular taxpayers who are just trying to live our best lives and who are not consumed with the mission to create one economic system to rule the world. You know, most of us are not in this pinky in the brain situation, but we are paying for it. We are financing it. And so if we decide to let them turn China into an enemy instead of a competitor, if all those weapons that we've facilitated the sales of around the world are going to be used, we will be called to fight and die, or to send our kids to fight and die. And so I want us to at least sit back and ask ourselves if this is a fight that we have to be in. Because it's not good to have enemies. And so perhaps we should take a minute and breathe through some of the hysteria and consider if China needs to be in the enemy category. Perhaps we should take a beat and ponder if we are being bullshitted by the same people who bullshitted us into invading Iraq into believing that we have enemies where what we really have is non-compliance and competition with the World Trade System. You know, how many times are we going to go to fight and die for their causes? How far into debt are we willing to let our country go? How many more services here at home are we willing to go without in return for our tax money for the cause of enacting their global economic rules? Because that's what this is all about. Here's Representative David Scott of Georgia in a hearing that was titled Combating the Economic Threat from China. This took place on February 7th.
I am deeply concerned with the fast-growing possibility of a China-led world order that includes the Chinese military, controlling the South Pacific trade routes, because the South Pacific trade walk is now the lifeline of the entire global economy.
This is what we fight for. Our military is the security and muscle for World Trade System multinational companies. We pay for a military that is strategically positioned around the world to protect them for free as they schlep around the world because they have scattered their businesses all over the place chasing cheap labor. The World Trade System is a system designed by and for multinational corporations and for the shareholders they funnel wealth to. It's a system designed to allow those companies to extract resources and profit from other countries while minimizing the amount they have to pay to the locals in return. Free trade. Free as in no taxes. That's the heart of it. And they don't want that system to have a competitor. They want the World Trade System to be a monopoly. But our government has shown time and time again that it pulls the strings on the World Trade System. And, do you trust the unchecked power of our government right now? Because I don't. And so why should the rest of the world? And so what's happening globally, it makes sense. The creation of an alternative to the World Trade System's banking monopoly, it makes sense, which is why it can't be explained to us this way, because we might question what we are doing if it were explained to us this way. And so what I'm witnessing is that our Congress is so damn old that they are bringing back a 50-year-old boogeyman, the communist. Ooh. Because you cannot hear the country of China being discussed without the word communist being attached.
The Chinese Communist Party.
Chinese Communist Party.
The Chinese Communist Party.
Chinese Communist Party.
The Chinese Communist Government. The Chinese Communist Government. Chinese Communist Government.
Chinese Communist Government.
Chinese Communist Government.
The Chinese Communist Government promote pro-communist propaganda.
But the Chinese government isn't communist. That's the name of a Chinese political party. But that label does not help Americans understand the game we are playing at all. Communist implies that the Chinese government owns every company in China, and our leaders in both parties are perpetuating that lie, and others. And while I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the Chinese economy, I can tell you that that much is simply untrue. And by saying communist over and over again, anytime China is discussed, they are prepping Americans, especially the older ones, the ones who vote and who bought the Cold War propaganda the first time. They are prepping Americans to think of China as an enemy. And it's a really dangerous propaganda game. And it's getting inaccurate to the point of unhinged. Here's Democrat Anna Eshoo of California in the TikTok hearing.
Well, I'm one that doesn't believe that there is really a private sector in China.
And here's Republican Senator Marco Rubio of Florida.
There are no such things as private companies in China. They do not exist.
No serious discussion of China on the global stage makes any such claim. This is just nonsense. And this lying or being wrong or propagandizing, whatever this is, the rest of the world knows it's crap. And while they may not know the reasons this crap is being fed to us, because I'm an American and I don't fully understand our leaders' thinking, but the rest of the world can see that our leaders tell us things that aren't true. And it's making us collectively ignorant. It's a negative feedback loop. We become less informed. We elect idiots to represent us. The idiots do stupid and reckless things. The corporate media hides their sins and lets them bullshit us. So we get even more ignorant. And so we reelect the idiots who do stupid and reckless things. And round we go. The rest of the world is watching all of this. They can see that even Americans can't trust the Americans in charge. And meanwhile, outside this country, where partnerships with China are being formed in a friendly way, China is exhibiting authoritarianism, is getting done. An inconvenient fact is that China has demonstrated itself capable of choosing competent leaders in a way that lately we have not. In China, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, chooses the leaders, and those leaders must have governing experience. So like, you must first govern a town to be considered for a leadership position in a province. And only after governing a province can you become a national leader. There's no pathway to national relevance for a Chinese Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's no pathway in China from trolling victims of school shootings online directly to national level lawmaking positions. Our system puts a lot of faith in the people, in each one of us, to make wise decisions about who we elect. And in this system, we are entrusted with the responsibility of making sure that whomever we send to represent us as part of the only 535 lawmakers in Congress, it's our responsibility to make sure we are sending good people who are competent and not senile, and at the very least, not batshit insane. And what do you think about our job performance lately? Because what I see is that despite decades of abysmal approval ratings for our Congress, we elect the same people over and over again. And when we have replaced them, at least in the last decade during which I have been professionally bearing witness, we have often replaced them with people who are worse. Just wait for the debt ceiling and government funding crisis this year. I don't know how I'm going to stay sane, because I am betting that this is going to be the most batshit House of Representatives yet. And we've seen some things, and so that's saying a lot. And then our stewardship of the executive branch? Donald Trump. The fact that we are treating him as a viable candidate for office after what he pulled after losing 2020, he's still saying that he won that election, which means he's either one of two things. He's either a pathological liar or he's insane. Either way, how dare we even consider letting him be in the running to be the most powerful person in this world again? How dare we? None of this inspires confidence, at home or abroad, in the resilience of our governing system. And believe me, I hate saying all this. It is much more fun and profitable to say that USA is number one. USA, USA, USA. The other team, USA, they suck. USA, we win. USA, USA, we deserve to win. We're the best. USA. That is so much more lucrative. But we have leaders right now who don't seem interested in playing the global game. I want democracy to compete to win. I want us to design and enact an economic system that can compete to win. But what I'm witnessing is that instead of competing, we're on a path to become what we despise. Because the solution to TikTok having a connection to China is not to empower our government to ban any company connected to a Chinese person or a Russian person or an Iranian person or a Cuban person or a Venezuelan person or any other person who's from a country on the elite's baddies list. That's a one-way path to economic isolation, which won't be fun for a country that doesn't make anything for itself anymore. And the solution to foreign bullshit is not to ban any source of information that connects Americans to news outside the U.S. bubble. That only works out well for the people who want to lie to us and get away with it. Our country is in a power competition, and the way to win a great power competition is to compete. And so if we want the world to think that we are a better partner in business, we have to be better. If we want the world to trust our preferred banking system, we have to secure documents and data and not allow backdoors and secret warrants. If we want the world to trust our stewardship of the financial system, we have to punish corporate executives who break laws or who oversee the breaking of laws in the pursuit of profits. If we want the world to trust that democracy is a better system than the systems with extreme government control, I don't want authoritarianism. But if we want to prove that democracy is better, we have to make sure that our system can't be manipulated by elites who rig district maps and who rig their primaries. We need to show the world this works by using this system to elect thoughtful, competent people. If we want the world to trust our economic system and participate in it, we need to show the world that our people are happy and healthy and that our system can provide a high standard of living for every citizen. And if we want the world to trust us in general, we need to elect people who will keep our country's previous promises even if they wish those promises weren't made. That's how we compete. We rebuild trust. And I do think we can compete. So this following clip is from Peter B. Harrell, and this is from testimony in that hearing about combating the economic threat from China. And he, from 2009 to 2012, served on the State Department's policy planning staff, where he helped Hillary Clinton with her economic statecraft. And then from 2012 to 2014, he was the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Counter-Threat Finance and Sanctions in the State Department. And here is what he is telling Congress about the situation.
I think it's important that we all, as we think about China policy, we all recognize that China, though a serious competitor, and by far our most significant economic competitor, is not 10 feet tall. It's not some sort of mythical beast that we cannot outcompete. And I think you've highlighted a couple of the reasons, Congresswoman, why that's the case. They do have high levels of debt. They also have serious long-term demographic problems, coming to having a shrinking working age population.
China has problems too. And we still have enormous advantages. We're still in charge of the global economy. The dollar is still the reserve currency in most of the world. We are still powerful. We haven't really lost anything yet. We can compete should we choose to change our behavior. But instead, our leaders seem to have us on a course not to compete, but to go the Facebook way, to go the way of, if you can't beat them, kill them. Do what's necessary to change them and use violence if necessary. Change them. Here's Representative William Timmons of South Carolina in that economic threat from China hearing.
And the question is, what are we going to do to get China to reform their behavior and compete in the global economy and be good actors in the global economy? That's the question.
We can't change China. We can only change our own government. So that is not the question. And in our own government, changes are happening. But we seem to be on a path to become everything we accuse them of being. To become a country with a government that coerces the private sector to do what it wants. To become a country with a government with a sophisticated system for the censorship of legal speech. To become a country that uses war instead of words in disputes with its neighbors. To become a country that is so misled by its leaders that the people don't even understand the game they're playing. And that's my biggest concern about all the hysteria that I'm seeing in this Congress in regards to China's current government. And I just hope that we Americans, that we just take a minute when we hear China bad and ask ourselves, why is that being said? Where is this information coming from? Do we want to fight and kill enemies, or do we want to play in the global competition? Do we want to play to win? I just hope we take a minute and think before we react, that we check facts and question our beliefs. Because when I look at the path that is being created for us by these members of Congress, I don't like where this path leads. Yet another happy ending for Congressional Dish. I swear to God, if you met me in person, I am not the most depressing person in the universe. I'm really not. Oh, man. I don't know what the next topic is going to be, but what I do know is that there would not be another episode if it wasn't for the Congressional Dish producers. So I want to thank everyone who is paying for the show. And if you're not paying for the show, please pay for the show, because I'm trying to keep doing this show. And again, you can find all the options on the Congressional Dish website in the Support the Show section. And before I wrap up this episode, we do have two people who are now executive producers of Congressional Dish. So welcome to the club. And if you are not hip to the value for value lingo here, executive producers are people that produce or pay for a significant portion of an episode's costs. But because, you should get to choose which episode you are working on that you're most proud of, this is retroactive. So if you contribute $535, you get to put your name on an episode of your choice as an executive producer. And the other thing that does is it puts your vouch on an episode, because on the Congressional Dish website, we have a tab called Most Valuable Episodes. And those are ranked based on how many executive producers those episodes have. Like, it's literally the most valuable episodes, the ones that have brought in the most money. And so if you are a new listener, that's a really good thing to check out if you want to know which episodes the people who pay for this show think are most worth your time. And it also tells me what the most valuable episodes are, and it helps me decide which topics I'm going to cover because, man, Congress legislates everything. There are so many different ways I can go with each of these episodes. There could be 100 of me, and we wouldn't be able to cover every hearing and every bill. So first up, I would really like to thank Michael Gaines, who is now an executive producer on not one, but 2 Congressional Dish episodes. So he picked Congressional Dish 102, the World Trade Organization episode. That's the episode that opened my eyes to this entire world trade system that I keep watching, and the patterns just keep appearing. Like, that was the first time that I really questioned anything, and it was because of country of origin labels. I saw a bill that actually became law that repealed country of origin labels on our meat. And I just said, I don't think anyone in America is asking our Congress to take away information about where our food is coming from. Why would they do this? And it turned out it was because of a court case in the world trade system that forced us to change our laws, or we were going to have to pay to have the law the way we want it. I mean, this world trade system, in a lot of ways, it trumps our own laws, and we don't have a vote in it. It's a fascinating thing. And so if you want to hear the episode where I looked into what the hell that was for the first time, that's the episode. And that one's pretty high up on the most valuable episodes list. And then the other one that he picked was Congressional Dish 147, which is controlling Puerto Rico, because we have territories in this country that are sort of a part of this country, but they don't have the same rights as the rest of us. It's pretty messed up. And so I went to Puerto Rico and I figured out what that situation was all about. I think that's a fascinating episode. It's really cool that you picked it. And so thank you so much, Michael, for being an executive producer. I love having people willing to put their names on these episodes and who are just as proud of them as I am. So, yeah, very, very cool. And also very cool is Drew Mochak, who is now our executive producer on episode 269. So this is one of the most recent episodes, the one about the National Defense Authorization Act and specifically Plan Ecuador. And Drew sent in a message along with his executive producer credit. He said, quote, I searched all the engines to find what was in the NDAA and came up with very little that wasn't from a .gov website. Welcome to my world. Saw nothing in any mainstream publication apart from a Yahoo Finance article that said they only read the summary, and something in a Forbes article about olives or something from a guy who was probably a spy. Journalists, particularly print journalists in the USA, particularly the ones that talk a big game about defending democracy and holding the rich and powerful to account, seem to have nothing to say. I understand it's not the only bill this term that will cost upwards of $1 trillion, nor the only one that will be several thousands of pages to read, almost as if they're making it hard on purpose. These large organizations are uniquely positioned to provide the resources to do that work of analyzing what is being done with our money and providing that service to their subscribers. But for whatever reasons, they have decided it's not worth their time. I can't do anything about them, but I can send the signal that this has value and there should be more of it. Your show is excellent and I'm proud to support it. P.S. Looking forward to seeing you in San Francisco. All right, 2 things there. Thank you. Thank you. I think this show has value too. And when you guys provide that value, it's what drives me. It tells me that there's a reason to do this, even though when I'm watching Congress, especially in episodes like this, it's just like, it feels like things are getting worse all the time. And so I just said to someone this morning, I'm like, I don't know why I do this. But the reason I do this is you. And because maybe at some point these messages can get out and maybe journalists will see that this information does have value and they will be incentivized to cover it for their own selfish reasons. Because I agree that this is valuable information. And when I look at how do we fix all these problems, right now, the problem seems to be Congress, but that's also the solution. That's the solution, is putting 535 people in that Congress that are going to do the things we want them to do, that make our lives better, that build our trust in the world. And that's where it's possible. It's the only place that's possible on a national level. So as much as my frustration and my deteriorating mental health can be blamed on Congress, it's also where I have all my hope. And so when you guys help me do this, it helps me to know I'm not alone. And then second, he said, looking forward to seeing you in San Francisco. I believe that this is an old email because what he is referring to is the live show that I did with my other podcast that I don't tell you guys about enough. It's one of the joys of my life. It's called We're Not Wrong. And I do that show with Justin Robert Young of Politics, Politics, Politics. He's our host. And also Andrew Heaton of The Political Orphanage. I've been living in Austin, Texas for the last 3 months, really working on We're Not Wrong and building We're Not Wrong because it is just such a wonderful little show. The three of us on the show and in our personal lives, we're friends. We hang out all the time. We disagree all the time, but we have fun with it. We're not mean to each other and we have really interesting debates. Andrew believes that the free market is the thing. I don't. And Justin thinks politics are fascinating and I don't. I find government fascinating and I despise our political arena right now, but it's really important for me to have Justin in my life because the 535 people that I want in Congress, their pathway there is politics. It's all the stuff that Justin covers. It's all really important. So it forces me to pay attention to that stuff, as disgusting as I find it. It's been so healthy for me. It's helped me do this show. And it's just helped me in my life. I love having these guys in my life, having podcasters in my life, and having these discussions about things that aren't just Congress. We talk about 3 topics a week, 2 for the public and 1 on our very goofy Patreon. Things get weird in our Patreon. We're not wrong. But it's very, very fun show. And we did our first live event in San Francisco, which went really well. We loved the experience. And I'm checking my phone right now to see if I have a date for you yet, and I don't. But before I leave Austin in the end of April, we are going to do a live show here in Austin. I don't know when, and I don't know where, and I apologize for that. But if you check We're Not Wrong, if you go to my Twitter page, I will definitely be putting the information on there. But if you are anywhere near Austin and you would like to meet me in person and find out that I'm not, always a Debbie Downer like I am on Congressional Dish due to my subject matters, I would love to meet you in person. And that's how I'm going to facilitate that. I think some of you might remember that years ago, I tried to do Congressional Dish live and it was a failed experiment. And as grateful as I am to the people at Podfest, Chris Kermitsos in particular, for giving me that opportunity, this is just not a show that travels well, but We're Not Wrong does. It really does. The live shows are really fun. We're experimenting with them now with the intention of coming to possibly your city in 2024. Yeah, I'm loving doing We're Not Wrong. And so if you haven't checked it out yet, that's where you can find me off the cuff and responding to things in real time. And I'm less careful with my words because I don't have a script over there. If you're curious about that, and if you want to hear debates, if you want to hear, especially if you don't like me, if you want to hear people challenging me, that's where you go for that. Because I do get challenged by my boys. They're so smart. So go check out We're Not Wrong. And if you're in Austin, that's how you can meet us. Yeah, we're just I don't want to announce something before we sign the contract because I did that before and I'm not going to do it again. So I did get to meet you, Drew, in San Francisco. Thank you so much for coming to the show and for being an executive producer on the NDAA episode. And I hope we get some executive producers for this one because you already know how I feel. I told you how I feel. All right. That's it for today. I'm done. Just done. All right. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
We're surrounded now by liars coming at us through our TV screens.
We don't have a domestic spying program.
They're content to fight in black and white despite of any in-betweens. We got a president who plays with the facts. And then he waves a flag to cover his tracks. As if a lie is alright, in the end will justify the means. Now we are so damn tired of being lied to.
The polar ice caps aren't going away.
We don't think we can deny it anymore.
government jobs consume the profits of the private sector.
We don't think we can deny it anymore. You can't stick to your story if you think it flies. But we're not keeping quiet anymore. Now we're not keeping quiet.
These bills represent common sense, bipartisan solutions that actually solve problems.